Alright, next part, my cartridge games. For my N64, my Super Nintendo. Perfect Dark, best first-person shooter on the N64. Fuck what anyone says. GoldenEye was good, but this is the perfected version of it. There's so much to do in that game, and it's so much fun. Star Wars Rogue Squadron. This is another pretty good game. I really enjoyed this one. It has a lot of really fun missions, a lot of different objectives with a lot of really cool Star Wars ships. Any Star Wars fan should like this. So just get too easily frustrated by video games. Oh my god, my favorite N64 game right here, Super Mario 64. Fun game, great levels, great music. I'm actually trying to practice speedrunning this game. I got inspired by watching Siglemic play a lot. I'd love to try and speedrun it. The Aero Fighters Assault. This game it's alright. I mean, its focuses more on realistic flight tactics, even though you're going against like robotic spiders and stuff like that. It's pretty challenging, and the big issue is the frame rate drops in this game has frozen on me several times. It's got MIDI kind of soundtrack, but it works for some of the levels. Pokemon Snap. This game's fun but short. You just take pictures of Pokemon, but you do it in crafty ways, and it's fun. Me and my siblings would try and compete for who had the best score on a picture. It's another great title right here, Star Fox 64. It's fun, multiple routes, multiple planets. It's a good little arcade-style game. Has great controls and a lot of memorable stuff. Do a barrel roll! This is the N64 version of Namco Museum. It has 6 Namco arcade games ported to the N64. It works fairly well. Not as good as arcade, obviously, but it's Namco arcade game or Namco games. It's fun. This is a game that causes controversy. A lot of people were really disappointed with this game. Personally, I don't really hate it. It's weird, and the gameplay itself is unorthodox. You eat fruit to beat levels, but this isn't horrible in my opinion. It's just weird. It's different. It's not perfect, but this game right here, though, man, it is so broken. It's still one of my favorite games, though. People have found so many glitches and exploits when doing speedruns and stuff, but this is still a great game. Whether you play it for speedrunning purposes, for glitches, or if you play it the way it was designed to doing completion and stuff, it's a really good game. Great story, great music, and it introduced a really good control scheme. One of my favorites. Alongside this classic right here, the reason, in my opinion, or what everyone says, is this game right here is pretty much the reason we can have console shooters, because this is the first original console shooter. Well, I don't know if it's the first, but it's the first major one. And it had multiplayer, too, which was really fun. But like I said, Perfect Dark's better because they tweaked it. Got Mario Party, the original. Fucking fun game to play, great party game. I play it with my sister all the time. Back in the day, it's really fun. It has some really cool mini games and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a great game. And Mario Party 2 only perfects it. I don't have that on cartridge. I have it on Virtual Console for the Wii. And Super Smash Bros., the original. This is what brought the phenomena known as the Smash Bros. Series. It's fun, not perfect, but fun. There's only a few game modes, but they're really good, and I really wish they'd bring back Board the Platforms. Maybe they'll do that in the next Smash Brothers. Now comes the one that's gonna be a pain in the ass to deal with. In the Super Nintendo games. Killer Instinct. This port of the game, though not graphically perfect, because it would be impossible to perfectly port Killer Instinct over the Super Nintendo, this is actually a fun version, even though it's toned down. It's still almost the same game. Oh, jeez. It's fun. That's what counts. For back in the day, since not everyone could afford an arcade machine or a Neo Geo, that was good. Super Mario Kart, the original Mario Kart, it's good, not perfect. It's a little harder in my opinion because of the turning mechanics using the D-pad, but other than that, this is a fun game. damn it. Keep dropping everything. Donkey Kong Country, very good platformer. One of the best ones for the Super Nintendo. Honestly, in my opinion, it's a good game. And I really like the style they took with it. Also really memorable music is that one. We have Super Adventure Island, overlooked, or not overlooked, but this is a game I'm not sure many people, or it's not, in my opinion, as popular amongst people I knew. If you've ever played any of the Adventure Island games, it's actually pretty fun, a little challenging, which is nice. It's a nice little challenging platformer. It's not the best one, but it's definitely worth a shot if you're looking for something new. Maximum Carnage, probably the only game that LJN made that wasn't complete shit. Great music, really fun atmosphere, really fit the Spider-Man comic atmosphere, even though Venom was significantly better in the game than Spider-Man. It's fun. It gets challenging. It's a good beat 'em up. Fucking games. Video games, woohoo. And we have Street Fighter 2 for the Super Nintendo. This is really one of the bigger titles for the Super Nintendo. Brought the classic fighting game to the Super Nintendo, and it's fun, and this port's fairly good. Not the CPS1 perfection, but is definitely a good game. If you've never played Street Fighter 2, then get the fuck out of here. Super Mario World, really fun, really good Super Mario game, one of the last 2D ones before it was revived. It's a fun game, and it has a lot of really neat little gimmicks that really work, and another memorable soundtrack. It's one of my favorite Mario games. You also have a Dungeons and Dragons game, Ideal Beholder. I've only played this a handful of times, and I can say it's weird because you have to try and manage a somewhat 3D game in it, and it's weird at times, kind of slow, but it's definitely not the true Dungeons and Dragons experience, that's for damn sure. Oh my god, this is hurting my hand so much to reach back there. The Stargate game for the Super Nintendo, it's average, not that great, not that bad though. It's playable, but not perfect. I don't know much about what people think about that game, so I personally think it's okay. I mean, I haven't played it that much, but it's average. F-Zero, the original, very good game. Like I said though, it's the same issue with Super Mario Kart. The turning mechanics with the D-pad are a little weird. Also, if by chance you hear noise in the background, that's because I was watching a stream before I recorded this. Siglemic doing his speedruns. We've also got Star Fox, which is a good game. We use the pseudo 3D effects for the Super Nintendo. It was definitely interesting, though Super Mario 64 refined this game. There's actually a sequel for Star Fox that plays a lot like how Star Fox for the DS would have worked, or the Star Fox for the DS works. And then we have the last of the Super Nintendo games, the biggest gimmick on the planet, Mario Paint. People bitched about Nintendo doing Wii as a gimmick. Nintendo's been doing gimmicks for years. Mario Paint, it's a gimmick. It's poor man's MS Paint, but it's it's a fun little gimmick. The mouse accessory is pointless beyond this game, but it's got pluses. It's got its ups and downs, and it has the Nat Swatter game, which is fairly fun. Okay, so now we're done with the drawer. It's time to move on to the last things, which include the handheld games and the Xbox games. Alright, next is my Xbox games, and I'm talking about the Xbox, the original, not the 360. We already covered that. So let's go ahead and start with a great game, whether you agree with me or not. The original Halo. I was never a big fan of Halo after like Halo 2, but this one right here is a classic. I still love it, and I really wish I could get it for PC, because I mean, people are still playing it, and I like Halo. So next we have a game that I'm not a big fan of, Return to Castle Wolfenstein: Tides of War. Now, I'm not a big fan of this because I don't like how the controls play out and how the single player is alright, but the biggest issue is, like I said, the controls feel weird. The funny thing is, though, I have this for PC, the Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and I love it. It just feels better on PC than this, and this adds a couple extra levels, but they're not that great. So we have Doom 3 expansion, which is Resurrection of Evil. I also have Doom 3, and you'll see that shortly. I had this on console before I bought it on PC, and I gotta say, this is actually pretty good on the Xbox. It's not as fast as the PC version, but it actually does a fairly good job and plays very well on the Xbox. It's a good expansion, by the way. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters. You know, if you're a fan of Godzilla, this is alright, but I mean, it's fun for a little bit, but it's really unbalanced, and I mean, the controls do a fairly decent job. They're a little unorthodox, but it's, you know, it's okay. In my opinion, anyways. Spider-Man, the video game, based on the movie, which I already covered, so. Alright. The Thing. I'll be honest, I haven't really played this a lot, so I can't really speak for it, so, yeah, this was my dad's, but I never, you know, really played it. I might have to in the future, but Blood Omen, this is a game I've only played a little bit as well. From my experience, it's average. I mean, I haven't found anything too exciting about it. And then we have this game, which I sadly have not played through yet. I really want to, though, because I've only played it a little bit, and it feels like a decent game so far. I know this game got a lot of praise. It's the console version, but It is what it is. I'll have to try it. Or I have to play through it at some point. This is a GameStop container used. The Punisher. This is actually a pretty fun game. It's very very violent. It very much suits the Punisher theme very well, though. Controls are decent. It's a decent playthrough. Especially if you're a fan of the Punisher. Dead or Alive 3, one of my favorite fighting game one of my favorite fighting games on the Xbox. Dead or Alive 3 is pretty much, you know, the usual Dead or Alive game, but with a couple changes here and there. Yeah, it's really fun. I like some of the stage design. I like the music. Every Dead or Alive game I've played so far, I've always used Tina. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I remember when this was big deal because these were limited in production when they were ported to console. So this was $70. It's not as good as the Dreamcast version of this game, but you know, it works. It's playing it on an Xbox controller is a little unorthodox, but you know, as a fan of Marvel vs. Capcom, this was kind of a must-have for me. This is what came with my Xbox. Was 2 games, Clone Wars, which is like an arcade-style playthrough. It's playable, nothing spectacular though, and then Tetris Worlds, which is Tetris, which is always fun in my book. We got an interesting game right here, 13. I love the art style of this game. The gameplay itself, though, is just it's on par. It's an average shooting game. Has a couple interesting elements here and there, but really the best part of this game is the art, the cel-shaded first-person shooter, and the comic book styled approach. Mortal Kombat Deception. I've never been a big fan of the 3D Mortal Kombat games, but this one's probably one of the better ones. I just like some of the other characters added here aren't as ridiculous or unorthodox as Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and it feels a little more refined. GoldenEye Rogue Agent. This game it's alright. It's very frantic, but very linear and feels very, it just gets repetitive. That's the biggest issue. Mech Assault was a game I got when I first had this. It's actually pretty fun. It's really destructive. It's really fun when you can play with other people. The variety of mechs is nice, and though there is a little bit of unbalance when you play like multiplayer or something, it's a fun game. I enjoyed it when I was playing it. Morrowind. This is a game I've played on and off every now and then when I had the Xbox. You know, it's an Elder Scrolls RPG game. This is a This is a decent game. I have fun with it. The only issue is with the Xbox. It does have several loading screen issues and inconsistent animation frame rates, but it's still good. This is a game my dad bought. I never really played it that much. I mean, what I did play, it wasn't that great. It was pretty average flying game. Splinter Cell, this is an interesting game. It's very, very tactical, very stealth-oriented. More stealth-oriented, in my opinion, than like Metal Gear Solid, because there's more emphasis on being quiet and stealthy as opposed to Metal Gear Solid. It's an interesting game if you've never played it. Simpsons Road Rage, this was a fairly average game for me. It was fun, a little bit frantic and fast, but it just, the way it got repetitive at times for me because the gameplay was just the same. I will admit, this is 20 years old. I love this game. Star Wars, Lego Star Wars, it's actually a really fun, casual game. There's lots to do, lots of unlockables. The other games are pretty much the same, but the original one was still by far one of my favorites. Medal of Honor Rising Sun. This is actually a pretty decent first-person shooter. You know, there was Medal of Honor is pretty much the one that kicked off the whole World War II shooter thing for consoles. This one's actually pretty decent. Pretty fun. I like some of the missions, and the first mission actually takes place on Pearl Harbor, and it's pretty well done in my opinion. The Xbox version is Soul Calibur 2 with Spawn. 007 Agent Under Fire. This game's alright. It's an average 007 game. I mean, there are better ones out there. Yes, this is the real tune right here. Sorry, my stuff just fell over. Doom 3 Collector's Edition. Alright, like I said, with the other games, it runs faster on PC, but on the Xbox, it's very good. It's playable, and controls are nice, looks good, and yeah, it's just a fun game. The interesting thing with the Collector's Edition is it comes with a couple videos from like some program on G4, I think. I can't remember exactly, and it also comes with Doom 1 and Doom 2. Sorry, let me fix this crap real quick. We're almost at the end. Republic Commando is a really fun game. The single player experience is awesome. I really wish I could have played multiplayer with more people, but from my experience it was good. This is a pretty well-rounded Star Wars and first-person shooter game. Definitely recommend it. I really want to try the PC version of it. Yeah, I know you hear me say that a lot, but it's true. If you got Star Wars Battlefront, you know, it's hard not to say anything bad about that game. And I also have it on PlayStation 2 as well as Star Wars Battlefront 2. Oops, sorry. And last but not least, Time Splitters 2. This is an incredibly fun game, lots to do, lots of creativity. It's a very good casual shooter, and it's just got so much replay value. Alright, and that's the Xbox games. Alright, and the last part, the handheld games. Alright, let's go ahead and look over these. I have a shit ton of these, and I'm going to be honest, looking through this before I recorded, I have some really bad Game Boy games, because those are all given to me by my cousin, and I don't think she was really a gamer, so we have is Home Alone. Now, I'm sure you can most of you know how fucking awful Home Alone is, but not the movie, I'm talking about the infamous game, but this isn't much better. Tom and Jerry for the Game Boy Color. This game is alright. I haven't played it much, but it's a platforming game. It's nothing excessive or difficult or anything like that. It's playable. That's what matters. Now this is the disappointment. I have Tony Hawk Pro Skater, as y'all saw, which is one of my favorite PlayStation games. This version was my sister's. She got it just because she liked the original. And this one fucking sucks. Personally, it's not even the same game. It turns more into like a fucking racing game with no good music whatsoever. So, yeah. Don't know why I even bother keeping that. Here's a good one, finally. Dr. Mario. Fun little puzzle game. Not as fun as Tetris, but I do enjoy this quite a bit. If you've never played Dr. Mario, I do suggest it if you like puzzle games. It's a little easier than most, but except for later levels where it starts to get damn near impossible. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. This is pretty much a Game Boy Color port of Super Mario Bros., which is awesome because I'd love to play Mario Bros. Wherever I am. And it also has a couple extra modes that add some replay value to it, which is always nice. Mortal Kombat 4 for the Game Boy Color. Be honest, I only bought this just because I was curious to see how it was, because I like Mortal Kombat. It was only like $2, and I would have never even paid $2 for something this bad. This game is awful. Mainly the biggest flaw with it is how awful the controls are. They're very sloppy and unresponsive. And then we have this game, which is Jordan vs. Bird, a basketball game for the Game Boy. I bet you can already tell where that's going. Yeah, the game's not that good. Another not-so-good game, Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly. It's pretty mediocre. It's not that fun and can be can be painful to play at times. This is kind of the spiritual successor to Balloon Fight. Balloon Kid. It's an adventure game that has the same kind of concepts and controls as Balloon Fight. It's not bad. That's a couple little challenges here and there. I still prefer it. If you like Balloon Fight, I guess you might want to try that. I also have the Game Boy version of Mega Man. It's not the same as the Nintendo version, but it's actually pretty playable. It's still fairly challenging and has not as many bosses, but it's still pretty fun. I will say it's a decent Mega Man game. Not, as good as the NES versions, though. Now we're going strictly to Game Boy Advance games. I have Link to the Past for the Game Boy Advance, which I honestly wish I still had, or wish I had the Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo, because this game is a fucking blast. I can easily see why people enjoy this version or consider it the best Zelda amongst many others, though I still like Ocarina better. I have the original Legend of Zelda on Game Boy Advance, which I also have on the collector's disc. This game is a pretty fun game, but it's really challenging because you have to do a lot of exploring, and it's not very straightforward. If you don't have patience, I suggest looking up a guide for it, because finding the temples and all the items you need and stuff can be challenging. Castlevania, speaking of challenging, this game is one of my favorites. It is very difficult, especially the first two levels aren't so bad, but everything after that really starts to get challenging. You really need to know where everything is and stuff like that. It's fun though. It's a fun little challenge. Shoutouts to Konami. They also made one of my other favorite games, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which I believe a friend of mine, or I borrowed from a friend of mine, and I really wish I still had a copy of it. Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, pretty much the same as the Super Nintendo version with a couple minor changes. It's fun. Frogger's Adventure. This game is pretty subpar. It tries to make a more serious approach to Frogger. I mean, it's playable at times. It's not executed very well, and it's not very challenging either. But then again, Frogger itself wasn't that challenging to begin with. I don't know why this is. I think this is my brother's, and it got into my games. Lilo and Stitch. I barely played it. And I can't really comment on it because I've literally only played it for about 15 minutes. This is actually a fun game right here. Mario Kart Super Circuit. If you've never played this game and you're a fan of Mario Kart, I do suggest this. This plays a lot like the original Mario Kart, which is a trend that the Game Boy Advance did. Is they went back to the Super Nintendo roots with a lot of games. This one's actually really fun. Has some good tracks, and it can be tricky though. Like I said, D-pad controls are a little hard for racing games, but it's a little better executed than the Super Nintendo. I have Namco Museum, which is 5 Namco games in here on the Game Boy Advance. They're pretty scaled down, but they're still playable. Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace. This is actually a fairly decent game. It's not as good as like Spider-Man 2 or the original Spider-Man games, but it provides a good playthrough. There's tons of stuff, or there's stuff to find to help you upgrade, like in the other Spider-Man games. It's 2D, but it's fairly decent. It's not bad, and it has some good music too. Then we have Metroid for the Nintendo version for the Game Boy Advance. I love Metroid. what a classic game that is. X2 Wolverine's Revenge. This is the Game Boy version of this game, which I will be perfectly honest and say it's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. It has some somewhat memorable tracks to it, and I mean, the game itself isn't terribly difficult. There's still stuff to unlock, and a couple of danger room missions that are pretty fun. Next we have Star Wars Trilogy. This is actually a pretty fun game. I got this not knowing that it was even in production, and said, since I'm a big fan of Star Wars, I said, this looks decent, I'll pick it up. And I will say it is actually not a bad game. It does the Star Wars thing pretty well. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is actually pretty fun too. It's like a side-scrolling beat-em-up, which is in 2D as opposed to the 3D versions that were on consoles at the time. I never played any of those though, and this one is actually pretty fun. Has some fairly memorable music, even though I do prefer the older Ninja Turtles games as well as the older Ninja Turtles series. It's still surprisingly fun. F-Zero Maximum Velocity. This one was I'm a little iffy on. I don't like this as much as some of the other F-Zero games. The biggest thing is there's a change in characters and setting, which isn't too bad. It's just the biggest issue is some of the music isn't as memorable, and I think honestly the F-Zero X and GX controls are a lot better than the older versions. And this one is this one's tracks are a little harder to deal with the whole, D-pad configuration. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game, it's just, I prefer the other F-Zero games. I don't know why I fucking have this, but this is one of those Game Boy videos, you can get, and it's Sonic X. Like I said, I have no idea why I have this. I don't even remember buying that at any point. Yoshi's Island, what a memorable game. It's, like I said, it's the, pretty much a port of the, Super Nintendo version, and it is executed well. I really like it. Super Mario Pinball, I'm a little iffy on this. It's a little weird for me, the game itself. I mean, it's not bad, but it's a very unusual take on Mario, and it can be a little tricky at times, hard to play pinball in some of the settings that are in this game, but like, I won't regard it as a bad game. Oh wait, I have one more Game Boy game, Miss Pac-Man. Now, this cartridge is a little messed up, so it doesn't run all the time for me, but, it's just a Game Boy version of Miss Pac-Man. You can't really complain about that. Now we have the DS. I have a DSi, by the way. Let's see what the games. I'm still missing some of my games for the DS. I don't know where some of them went. Mortal Kombat, or Ultimate Mortal Kombat. This is pretty much Mortal Kombat, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in cartridge form. It had online play, but I never got to try it. And I'm a huge fan of Mortal Kombat, and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is one of my favorites, so it's nice to have it portable. It also has Puzzle Combat, which is gimmicky, but at least worth trying. Zelda Phantom Hourglass. People are a little iffy on this game, but from my experience, I haven't finished it. It's not bad. It's just the touchscreen feels weird, especially when I'm used to playing Zelda the way it traditionally was played. This is a game I'm not a huge fan of. Star Fox Assault, or Star Fox Command. This game was a disappointment to me when I got it, because, I mean, the strategic part of it, mapping out chips and stuff, adds a little, depth to it, but I always liked just being able to fly around instead of having to deal with, navigating different ships, which is cool because there's different playable ships, but some of them are significantly worse than others. This game I love, New Super Mario Bros. It goes back to the old school Mario gameplay, and it's a blast. Some of the levels are really well designed and has some memorable music, and it's incredibly fun, which is what matters. Speaking of incredibly fun, WarioWare Touch. This is probably one of my favorite WarioWare titles. Which made me just realize I have no idea where my WarioWare ink cartridge is for my Game Boy Advance, because I know I have it. Touched is fun. There's tons of collectible little gimmicks that are awesome, and some of the minigames are really fun, especially the Nintendo ones in this one. It also has a sweet remix of Hogan's Alley theme. I have the original Brain Age. I did this for fun for a while. It's a little cranial challenge. It's gimmicky, but it's a good little brain exercise every now and then. Kirby Superstar Ultra. This is an enhanced version of Kirby Superstar. I love it. It's fun. It has a lot to do. Retro Atari is another game I got way back in the day. Just a bunch of Atari games, but the cool gimmick is it's got the touchscreen controls, and it also has graffiti art style with some of the famous graffiti artists like what is it? Frick, I can't remember the names right now. Sorry. My little brother gave this to me. I've barely played it, and I'm glad I haven't because my experience so far wasn't that good. It's Spider-Man 3. Don't bother. The original demo that came with my original DS, Metroid Prime Hunters First Hunt. It's just a series of three little short games which are fairly fun and playable as a demo. GoldenEye Rogue Agent for this version is not much better than the one you get in consoles. It's actually scaled down. Metroid Prime Hunters is a good game. I really like it. It puts more emphasis on action as opposed to the previous Metroid Prime games. It has multiplayer that's pretty fun too, including multiple playable hunters, which adds some interesting gameplay. Contra 4! I fucking love Contra. Contra 4 is a pretty fun game. It's, in my opinion, not as challenging as some other Contras, but it also includes some unlockable Contra games, which is always nice to have the originals on the go as well. Resident Evil Deadly Silence is pretty much a remake of the original Resident Evil, which includes its terrible voice acting, which is awesome. I have another version of this, I don't know why. And the last but not least, Moon. This is actually fairly decent. It's a first-person game for the DS. It's made by the same people that made Dementia, The Ward. And it's pretty much a campaign-based game, and some of the gameplay itself is pretty good. It has a good control scheme, and the atmosphere isn't too bad. It's, you know, it doesn't have too much replay value after you play a campaign, but it's worth it to play through once at least. Anyways, that's all my console games and stuff. Eventually, I'll probably, along with this, do my games I have on Steam as well, just commentary like this as well. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the crap I own, and I'm the Psycho Ripper, and everyone take care.